There are certain behaviors women exhibit that bypass men's rational thinking entirely, creating what Carl Jung called archetypal fascination, an attraction so powerful it operates below the level of conscious awareness. These aren't manipulative tactics or learned seduction techniques. Instead, they're authentic expressions of feminine psychology that trigger deep, unconscious responses in the masculine psyche. Jung discovered that these behaviors tap into what he termed the anima projection, where men unconsciously recognize qualities that represent their own undeveloped feminine aspects. Jung's research revealed that the most dangerously seductive female behaviors aren't about physical appearance or obvious sexuality. They're psychological patterns that create what he called numinous attraction, a magnetic pull that feels almost mystical in its intensity. These behaviors are dangerous precisely because they operate on such a deep psychological level that men often don't understand why they're so powerfully drawn to women who exhibit them. Consider Sarah, a 34-year-old marketing executive who consistently attracts men without seeming to try. She's not conventionally beautiful by magazine standards, yet men find themselves inexplicably drawn to her presence. What Sarah possesses, according to Jung's framework, are authentic expressions of what he called integrated feminine energy, behaviors that emerge naturally from psychological wholeness rather than conscious strategy. The danger in these behaviors lies not in their intention, but in their effect. Jung observed that when women authentically embody certain archetypal feminine qualities, they can trigger what he called anima possession in men, where the masculine psyche becomes overwhelmed by its projection of idealized femininity onto the woman. This creates intense attraction, but also potential psychological instability, if not understood and managed consciously. Before we explore these psychologically powerful behaviors that Jung identified as irresistibly attractive to the masculine psyche, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We dive deep into the most profound psychological insights about attraction, relationships, and the unconscious dynamics between masculine and feminine energy. Jung believed that understanding these behaviors is crucial for both men and women. Women need to understand the psychological power they wield so they can use it consciously and responsibly, while men need to recognize when they're under the influence of anima projection so they can respond from awareness rather than unconscious compulsion. The goal isn't manipulation, but mutual understanding of the deep psychological forces that govern attraction and relationship dynamics. These behaviors become dangerously seductive when they trigger what Jung called participation mystique, a psychological state where boundaries between self and other become blurred, leading to obsession, idealization, and loss of individual identity. When understood and expressed consciously, however, these same behaviors can create the foundation for deeply meaningful and transformative relationships. The first dangerously seductive behavior Jung identified is what he called authentic mystery. This isn't about playing games or withholding information to create artificial intrigue. Instead, it's the natural depth that comes from a woman who has cultivated a rich inner life and doesn't feel compelled to reveal everything about herself immediately. Take Elena, a 29-year-old artist who captivates men not through revealing clothes or flirtatious behavior, but through her genuine depth and the sense that there are always more layers to discover about her. Jung observed that authentic mystery triggers the masculine psyche's archetypal drive to explore and understand. Men are naturally drawn to depth and complexity, and a woman who embodies genuine mystery through her interests, thoughts, experiences, and inner world creates what Jung called the quest dynamic. The man becomes unconsciously compelled to uncover her depths, not because she's withholding, but because she genuinely contains multitudes. This behavior becomes dangerous when it triggers what Jung termed anima fascination, where the man becomes obsessed with discovering the woman's secrets, often projecting onto her qualities and depths that may not actually exist. Elena, for instance, has had several men become possessive and controlling in their attempts to figure her out, mistaking her natural complexity for deliberate elusiveness. The second powerfully seductive behavior is emotional fluidity, the ability to experience and express the full range of human emotions authentically without being controlled by them. Consider Maria, a 31-year-old therapist who can be playful one moment, deeply contemplative the next, then passionately engaged in a cause she believes in. Her emotional authenticity creates what Jung called the living anima, a dynamic expression of feminine energy that feels alive and unpredictable in the most captivating way. Jung noted that many women suppress their emotional range to appear more acceptable or stable, but this actually diminishes their natural magnetism. Men are unconsciously drawn to emotional fluidity because it represents the full spectrum of human experience that their own socialization may have taught them to suppress. Maria's ability to feel deeply and express authentically awakens something in men that they may have lost touch with in themselves. However, this emotional fluidity becomes dangerously seductive when men mistake it for emotional instability or try to control it. Jung observed that some men become addicted to the emotional intensity that such women provide, creating what he called emotional vampirism, where they rely on the woman's emotional range to feel alive themselves rather than developing their own emotional intelligence. The third behavior is independent sensuality, a woman's comfort with her own body and sexuality that isn't performed for male approval, but emerges from genuine self-acceptance and bodily awareness. Independent sensuality manifests in women like Carmen, a 38-year-old dance instructor who moves through the world with unconscious grace and body awareness. She's not trying to be sexy. She simply inhabits her body fully and comfortably. This creates what Jung called natural magnetism, an attraction that emerges from authentic self-possession rather than performance. Men find this dangerously seductive because it suggests a woman who knows herself intimately and doesn't need external validation to feel beautiful or desirable. Jung observed that independent sensuality triggers the masculine archetype of the lover, awakening men's desire not just for physical connection, but for the kind of uninhibited self-expression that such women embody. Carmen has noticed that men are drawn to her energy even in non-romantic contexts, often becoming tongue-tied or unusually attentive in her presence. This happens because her comfort with her own sensuality awakens their own suppressed relationship with pleasure and embodiment. The danger lies in what Jung called projection of the erotic anima, where men project their fantasies of perfect sexuality onto women who display natural sensuality. Carmen has experienced men becoming obsessive or possessive, mistaking her self-possessed sensuality for sexual availability or invitation. Jung warned that independent sensuality can trigger primitive masculine impulses if not met with conscious awareness. The fourth seductive behavior is intellectual independence, a woman's capacity for original thought and her refusal to diminish her intelligence to make others comfortable. Dr. Rebecca Chen, a 35-year-old philosophy professor, exemplifies this quality. She engages in conversations with genuine curiosity and isn't afraid to disagree or present challenging ideas. Her intellectual confidence creates what Jung called mental fascination. Men find themselves drawn to her mind as much as her appearance. Jung noted that intellectual independence triggers the masculine archetype of the sage, awakening men's desire for mental stimulation and growth. Rebecca has observed that men often become more articulate and thoughtful in her presence, as if her intellectual energy elevates their own thinking. However, this can become problematic when men feel threatened by her intelligence or try to compete rather than collaborate intellectually. The danger of intellectual independence lies in what Jung termed anima possession through the mind, where men become obsessed with winning the woman's intellectual approval or proving their mental worth to her. Some men in Rebecca's life have become competitive or dismissive when they feel intellectually challenged, while others have become dependent on her validation of their ideas. The fifth behavior is emotional unavailability with warmth. The paradoxical combination of being genuinely caring and present while maintaining clear emotional boundaries. Consider Sophia, a 32-year-old veterinarian who is deeply compassionate with both animals and people, but doesn't lose herself in others' problems or emotions. She offers genuine empathy without becoming emotionally enmeshed, creating what Jung called the sacred feminine, nurturing without sacrificing the self. This behavior drives men to distraction because it activates both the caretaking anima and the challenge of earning deeper intimacy simultaneously. Sophia's emotional unavailability with warmth creates what Jung called the Madonna whore complex in reverse. Men simultaneously want to protect her and possess her more completely. She's experienced men becoming increasingly persistent in their attempts to break down her boundaries, mistaking her healthy limits for a challenge to overcome rather than a sign of psychological maturity. Jung observed that this behavior triggers the masculine hero archetype, the desire to be the one worthy of the woman's deeper emotional investment. Sophia has noticed that men often compete with each other for her attention and approval, sometimes becoming resentful when she maintains her boundaries consistently with everyone. The danger lies in men becoming obsessed with being the exception to her emotional boundaries. The sixth dangerously seductive behavior is creative passion, a woman's deep engagement with creative pursuits that fulfill her soul regardless of external recognition or approval. Luna, a 33-year-old photographer, embodies this quality through her intense dedication to her art. When she talks about photography, her entire being lights up with an energy that Jung called possessed by the creative anima. Men find this passion intoxicating because it represents the kind of authentic engagement with life that many people have lost. Creative passion triggers what Jung termed the artist archetype in men, awakening their own suppressed creativity and desire for meaningful expression. Luna has observed that men often become fascinated with her creative process, wanting to understand and participate in her artistic vision. Some have even changed career paths after being inspired by her passionate dedication to her craft. However, creative passion becomes dangerously seductive when it triggers what Jung called muse projection, where men become obsessed with being part of the woman's creative world or possessing her creative energy for themselves. Luna has experienced men trying to control her artistic choices or becoming jealous of the time and energy she devotes to her photography. Some have even attempted to sabotage her work when they felt it competing with their relationship. The seventh and most powerfully seductive behavior Jung identified is authentic vulnerability, the ability to reveal genuine emotions and struggles without using them to manipulate or control others. This is exemplified by Grace, a 30-year-old social worker who can share her fears, hopes, and past wounds with touching honesty while maintaining her emotional strength and independence. Authentic vulnerability creates what Jung called the wounded healer archetype, awakening men's desire to both protect and be healed by the woman's openness. Grace's ability to be genuinely vulnerable without being helpless or manipulative triggers deep protective instincts while simultaneously creating profound emotional intimacy. Men find themselves sharing things with her that they've never told anyone else. Jung warned that authentic vulnerability becomes dangerous when it triggers what he called savior complex in men, the unconscious compulsion to rescue or fix the woman rather than simply witnessing and supporting her experience. Grace has had several relationships where men became possessive and controlling, believing they needed to shield her from all future pain rather than honoring her strength and resilience. The psychological power of these behaviors lies in their ability to activate what Jung called the archetypal feminine in men's unconscious minds. Each behavior triggers specific masculine archetypes: the explorer, lover, sage, hero, artist, and healer, creating a complex web of attraction that operates far below conscious awareness. This is why men often can't explain why they find certain women so irresistibly compelling. They're responding to archetypal patterns that evolved over millennia of human development. Jung observed that women who naturally embody these behaviors aren't trying to seduce anyone. They're simply being authentically themselves. This authenticity is precisely what makes them so dangerously attractive, because it represents the integrated anima that men unconsciously seek for their own psychological completion. The danger arises when men project their idealized feminine onto these women, rather than recognizing the behaviors as inspiration for their own psychological development. Consider the case of Isabella, a 36-year-old architect who embodies all 7 behaviors naturally. She's mysterious because she has genuine depth, emotionally fluid because she's psychologically healthy, sensually independent because she accepts herself fully, intellectually independent because she values truth, emotionally unavailable with warmth because she has healthy boundaries, creatively passionate because she loves her work, and authentically vulnerable because she's done her psychological healing work. The combination of all these qualities makes her almost impossibly attractive to men, yet also frequently misunderstood. Isabella has learned to recognize when men are relating to their projection of her, rather than to her authentic self. She's developed what Jung would call conscious relationship skills, the ability to maintain her authentic expression while helping others relate to her reality rather than their fantasy. This requires what Jung termed holding the tension, staying true to herself while compassionately redirecting others' projections. If you're recognizing these patterns in yourself or want to understand the deep psychological dynamics of attraction, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We explore the profound insights that can help you navigate relationships with greater awareness and authenticity. Whether you're expressing these behaviors or responding to them in others, the key insight Jung offers is that these behaviors become truly dangerous only when they're unconscious. Either the woman doesn't realize the psychological power she wields, or the man doesn't recognize when he's under the influence of archetypal projection. When both parties understand these dynamics consciously, the same behaviors that could create obsession and dysfunction can instead foster deep, authentic connection and mutual psychological growth. Jung believed that the ultimate purpose of attraction isn't just romantic fulfillment, but psychological evolution. These behaviors attract us to people who can help us integrate aspects of ourselves that remain undeveloped. A woman's authentic mystery calls forth a man's capacity for depth. Her emotional fluidity awakens his emotional intelligence. Her independent sensuality inspires his own embodiment. Her intellectual independence challenges his thinking. Her bounded warmth teaches him about healthy intimacy. Her creative passion ignites his own. And her authentic vulnerability invites his genuine strength. The transformational potential of these dangerously seductive behaviors becomes apparent when we understand Jung's concept of the transcendent function, the psychological process that integrates opposing forces within the psyche. When a woman authentically embodies these behaviors and a man relates to them consciously rather than through projection, both individuals have the opportunity to develop aspects of themselves that might otherwise remain dormant. Jung observed that the most successful relationships involve what he called mutual individuation, where each partner's authentic expression calls forth the other's psychological growth. The woman who embodies natural mystery emotional fluidity, independent sensuality, intellectual independence, bounded warmth, creative passion, and authentic vulnerability isn't just attractive. She's evolutionarily necessary for men's psychological development, just as conscious masculine qualities are necessary for feminine psychological completion. The case of Marcus and Diana illustrates this principle beautifully. Marcus, a 42-year-old engineer, was initially drawn to Diana's creative passion and intellectual independence, but found himself becoming possessive and controlling. Through therapy and self-reflection, he learned to recognize when he was relating to his anima projection versus Diana herself. As he developed his own creativity and emotional intelligence, the qualities he was projecting onto her, their relationship transformed from dangerous obsession into conscious partnership. Diana, meanwhile, learned to recognize when her natural behaviors were triggering unconscious responses in men and developed what Jung called conscious femininity, the ability to express her authentic self while helping others relate to her reality rather than their fantasies. She learned to set boundaries with men who couldn't handle her intensity while remaining open to those who could engage with her authentically. Jung's research suggests that these 7 behaviors represent what he called the individuated feminine, qualities that emerge naturally when women have done their psychological development work and are expressing their authentic selves rather than performing roles designed to gain approval. The danger isn't in the behaviors themselves, but in the unconscious responses they can trigger in both the women who exhibit them and the men who encounter them. The practical implications are profound. Women who recognize these behaviors in themselves can learn to wield their psychological power consciously and responsibly, understanding the effects they have on others while maintaining their authentic expression. Men who understand these dynamics can learn to respond to such women from awareness rather than compulsion, using their attraction as a guide to their own psychological development rather than as justification for possession or control. Jung believed that conscious relationship becomes possible only when both partners understand the archetypal forces at work in their attraction. These dangerously seductive behaviors, when met with conscious awareness, become doorways to profound intimacy and mutual growth, rather than sources of obsession and dysfunction. The ultimate message of Jung's work is that authentic femininity isn't dangerous. Unconsciousness is. When women embody these qualities consciously, and men relate to them consciously, the result isn't dangerous seduction, but what Jung called sacred relationship. Connection that serves both individual development and collective evolution. These behaviors represent the feminine psyche's contribution to human consciousness, offering men opportunities to integrate their own undeveloped feminine aspects while supporting women's authentic self-expression.